Joining us now on Practical 365 is Robichaux, who's here as a guest for a change, Michel de Rooij, and Tony Redmond. So 3 MVPs and tech speakers on the show. So hello, everybody. How are you?
Steve.
Now, we're going to talk about a few different things because at Tech, which is of course in Dallas, October 2nd to 3rd, we've got the pre-conference workshop, which Michel, you're hosting with Basilius, and of course we've got all of your sessions and a PowerShell Script-Off, which Dean has been mentioning tirelessly on the previous episodes, of course. So first, I wanted to talk about your sessions. And Tony, I know that everybody comes around to see what you've got to say about various things, and the last few Tech Europe and sessions like that have been from you on Copilot, I think. So I'm interested to see that looks like it's a bit of a change in tack away from.
Well, I can't keep on talking about AI because people would get bored. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try and look at the dark corners of Microsoft 365. I mean, all ecosystems have places that you don't really want to go or you don't want to talk about because things are bad or horrible and just don't work. And I think there are many of those type of places that do exist inside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And maybe it's a good thing to start talking about the flaws, because if we talk about the flaws, then we can go and fix them. And so I have many targets to choose from, many flaws to discuss, and I'm just going to have a great time. I don't care what the audience thinks.
So, and one thing that holds me back sometimes from writing about things is if you've not got anything positive to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. It's something people commonly say, and sometimes there's not a good spin on things, though, and that shouldn't obviously hold people back from writing. But there's a lot of great things about Microsoft 365. I suppose in these dark corners, is it a focus on the things that Microsoft have finished properly? Is there a positive spin on it, apart from perhaps Microsoft going there with a checklist of things that they should go and do?
The positive spin is knowing where you're going to run into difficulties. That's always a good thing. The positive thing is by surfacing flaws and issues, we can collectively work with Microsoft to make things better. I think one of the things I've learned in working with Microsoft, not for Microsoft. I've never worked for Microsoft, but I have worked with Microsoft for near on 30 years now. And one of the things that I've learned over that period is that if you are very clear and specific about issues and document them and present them to Microsoft people, say, look, these are the issues. Here are the things that you are doing very wrong. You're doing very badly. Then most of the time they're willing to change. I do have the caveat that most of the time I've had spectacular run-ins with engineering groups in the past. Yammer comes to mind, for example. Didn't do so well there. And that's because I advocated killing that product a long time ago. So, but there are areas of improvement that you can advocate for. And if you're clear and specific about them and say why these are problems, then perhaps people will listen to you and we'll get change. So I plan to do that.
So it's not necessarily saying somebody's baby is ugly, but it's a bit like a teacher giving a bad school report. Really, the parent, as in the product group, should take it as it's meant. Somebody that wants them to succeed and is giving them sometimes critical advice, but it's coming from the right place.
I think it's that could do but better.
Yeah,
it's the way, you've got a good thing going here, but you could do better, and you could do a lot better in some cases. Now, to go back to the Copilot thing, I think because it's compulsory to mention AI in everything we do. I think one of the things that we have seen over the last year is Microsoft scrambling in many, many, many areas to close off gaps that have been revealed by Copilot. Some of those gaps are pretty horrible, like the ones that have been exposed at Black Hat 2024. And some of them are just, things that tenants should have done better, but Microsoft, of course, were encouraging a different type of behavior and people fell into the trap. So these are the things we learn over time. We learn the consequences of our actions. The kind of positions that people took in 2014, 2015, 2016 are not necessarily the positions they would take today. So it's important to talk about these things, understand where mistakes were made, and understand what you can do to get past those mistakes. I hope that people who come to the session will walk out and say, oh, of the 10 or 11 or 12 themes I'm going to cover, 2 of these are really important to my organization. If they can go home and they can improve things in those 2 areas, then that session is successful. And that's what I hope.
Brilliant. It's less Microsoft bashing, but mitigate against these things to have success, because the audience is people who are doing this in their organizations, people who bought this from Microsoft. Hunter.
Yeah, and they're interested in getting the maximum value out of their investment. Tech, above all, is about practicality.
Yeah.
And before you can be practical, you've got to know what you're dealing with. And so we're going to deal with the practical issues that people can work on, can do better in, and can take solutions away from tech to improve things inside their own tenant. That's what we're going to do.
Now, Michel, we had you on the podcast a little while ago, so I wanted to talk to you though now, not about your fantastic column on Practical 365, but it's almost following on from what you write about on a regular. PowerShell scripting, from snippets to scripts and automation.
Yeah, I'm hosting a session on tech about PowerShell. I'm trying to bring the audience some practical use cases, task-oriented examples of things they can use in everyday use.
Yeah.
Because we learned from previous texts together with Tony that there are a lot of administrators who, by now, and they should, because PowerShell is out for how long now? It's been several years, decade almost. And there's still people in love with the UI and having issues with copying, pasting one-liners is one thing, but turning it into a script or a more reusable product. So that's what I'm trying to do in the session. I'm also trying to see what other workloads from Azure, such as Azure Automation, you can use to automate scripts on the server side. And a topic I cannot avoid, sorry Tony, is to talk a bit about GitHub Copilot, Copilot in general. What can it do, and especially what it cannot do.
Don't mind GitHub for Copilot at all. For $10 a month, it's an incredible bargain.
Yes.
I mentioned that to you the last time you were on the show, and you were less enamored with it. But obviously, there's a great article by yourself about GitHub Copilot on the site that's worth a read. But it's not the only option, though, is it? You don't need to spend $10 a month. Other open source connectors into coding assistants as well that can be quite helpful. In fact, you could script your own assistant helper. I have one that I call GPT. One's called Claude, the other's called GPT, and runs on the command line. And I just go, GPT, help me write a script to do this. And then if I like the script, I ask it to save it, and it saves it. And that's for my one-liners. But
Steve, could that help you finish off that recipient management system that you were writing for Exchange Server?
If you have a look, I have actually published an update to that, but I've not written about it because it's on the dev branch. I've got to test it properly before I push dev to the main and production copy. But yes, it should be finished, actually. And yes, I did. Well, I didn't use GitHub Copilot, but I used Claude Sonnet 3.5 to help expand upon the bits that I just found laborious to write and improve some of the coding standards in it as well. So you say ChatGPT then as well. Do you mean at the API or people going to the site? Because that's obviously a bit of a no most employers, isn't it?
I don't use ChatGPT. Do you, Michel?
No, I don't. I've been playing around a bit by another MVP. I believe it's Dogfink. Wrote a PowerShell module hooking into the OP API, and then you can ask it questions or throwing code at it in an OpenAI, asking it to complete stuff or fixing errors. You can also do all sorts of things with it, but it's not. Yeah, you still need to know what you're doing. Is the conclusion.
Yeah,
but that's something I will hook into on my session.
So there's a key point with the AI stuff there, which is if you know what you're doing, it makes you more productive. If you don't know what you're doing, you could make a right mess, or you could end up more lost. A bit like if you searched on the internet and you found 15 different ways of doing it, and you don't know where to start.
But it's a matter of positioning, I think, because for a learning tool, it's a great way to start scripts, having an outline of what you're doing. But vendors are positioning it as a solution to everything. I think it's not. Sometimes, depending on the grounding and everything, or they're asking the wrong questions, you get wrong output. Oh, that doesn't work. You still need to have a look at it. So what is then the time you saved initially by using OpenAI? So yeah, those are the kinds of questions you'll have when using Copilot or OpenAI.
So automate, and then a bit of AI, because you've got to shove it into every single presentation in some sort of way. I think at the last Tech Europe, I noticed quite a few people had AI generated images, and at least 2 people had a similar AI generated image of people in a computer center control room or whatever looking for security threats as I did. And it's like, yeah, okay, this is getting a bit tired. But the context thing of both of these is it's not about AI, it's about what you do day to day, leveraging it as part of, just as another tool on the belt.
It's a skill you should certainly acquire, but it's not once.
Now, Paul, backups. A good segue actually is the fact that this afternoon I was coding on my Linux Fits servers at home, and I was going to pull an update to an open source package, and I thought, oh, I'll write myself a backup script because I'm not backing up this source code. And I know sometimes the project breaks. And I managed to, whilst writing the backup script, I typed rm-fr, the folder name, and I meant to put the backup folder that I was deleting to then copy over. And I put the wrong folder name. I deleted the thing I was trying to back up. Thankfully, it wasn't important. For Bash one-liners or PowerShell one-liners, it's obviously important to have backups of the things that you're making changes to. And then you've got Microsoft 365 and backups and their own software for party solutions. Are you going to be talking about that with no third-party affiliation, really, apart from the fact you which is a big backup vendor?
Yeah, I mean, I work for a third party, but one of the things that I've had to learn as an MVP, you all have been in the MVP world long enough to know and remember when the motto for MVPs was that we were independent and real world focused. So the good news is, I'm coming to talk about what Microsoft is doing, not what Keepit or Rubrik or Veeam or any of the other competitors in that space are building. But I guess, the first interesting thing, what you just said about your own backup mistake, everybody has done that. If you haven't done it, it's probably because you're not making backups at all, right? Which is worse, arguably. Microsoft is, they've done this dance for a long while. So back in the fairly early days of Windows Server, they decided they would bundle a product that they white labeled from Veritas to provide, inbox backup. And they've had a backup utility built into their on-prem versions of Windows for a while, but they've always made the argument that native data protection in their cloud services was so good that you didn't need a third-party backup tool. And they've changed their tune. They are not only are they not saying, oh, you don't need a third-party tool, they're selling their own first-party tool, but they built it in such a way that third parties can leverage it too. So
now, I don't have any skin in the game, but when I think of Microsoft saying at one point, you don't need this thing, and then they say, you need this thing, I always imagine that there's a pie. And they're looking at the pie, perhaps a vendor and Microsoft are sitting about to eat the pie, and then Microsoft are leaning over and go, actually, I'd like all of that, thank you.
Yes.
Whereas before they might be thinking, it's not a big market, we don't need that. As soon as they can see money in it, like a company, because that's what they are. Though obviously, these are often, Keepit is probably a Microsoft partner, right? It's not a great relationship if perhaps with my partner, my wife, we got a pie and I went, I fancy all of that. You have to share and you have to treat people with respect. And I don't think that ever fits into Microsoft's equation, really. Like with their relationship with OpenAI. They will make their own thing and then OpenAI will be terrible, according to them. The end result. Probably.
Yeah, Tim O'Reilly is famous for saying that Bill Gates is the kind of dinner guest who would come over and just help himself to all your mashed potatoes.
That is a quote that I was kind of like part referencing, but couldn't remember the attribution.
Yeah. And it's true, whether it's pie or mashed potatoes, right? And that's exactly the kind of competitive behavior in a positive way that leads Microsoft to look for new things that they can expand into. Yet, when I look at, okay, on the one hand, Microsoft is coming into this market and saying, you can buy a backup product from us, and it's going to be awesome. That has a potential to be a threat to other people who sell backup software. As with every 1.0 Microsoft product ever, there are some things that their initial product does very well. There are some things it doesn't do as well, and there are a lot of things it just doesn't do. So one of the things I want to talk about in my session is, okay, from a standpoint of the technology that Microsoft has built, they talk a lot about its strong points, and I think it's fair to acknowledge those and point out the good things that it can do for high-speed, low-granularity, large-scale recovery. But boy, you can make a pretty good argument that only covers sort of one place at the table, and there are a lot of other cases where you might want or need to recover data that Microsoft's solution doesn't do a good job of providing for. But you wouldn't know that from reading their material. So, I sort of want to take a more neutral look at what they are actually providing, what you can actually do with it, and how that compares to what people need to be able to do real world when they're trying to protect their enterprise.
Yeah. So that's going to be quite interesting. But also, do you cover how things are changing with Microsoft API access? Because there shouldn't really be a cost to back up your own data, but I suppose there can be, can't there?
There absolutely is a cost to back up your own data because,
No, I mean,
even in your case,
I think
even if you
can pay Microsoft for a backup solution, but if you're using a third-party solution, Microsoft don't charge data egress if you to download your Mailbox or OneDrive.
Well, okay, now wait a minute, that's not entirely true. They don't charge you to egress your own data from Office 365, but if you put it into Azure storage, they absolutely are going to charge you ingress and egress and storage for that. So the question is not, should you have to pay or do you have to pay to back up your data? The question is, where do you send the check? You can buy Microsoft's first-party solution and you can pay them. You can buy a third-party solution. You can pay the third party. There are many customers who are using Veeam where they have Veeam running on-prem and it grabs data from the cloud and puts it in their data center. And of course, they're paying for storage and compute and power and so on there. Microsoft's argument up until recently has been, well, you don't need to pay anybody for any backups because we have 4 copies of your Exchange data. We have, all these other native data protection measures, which means your backup cost is included in what you're paying for your whatever licenses. They've realized something that I think, how do I want to say this diplomatically without getting the EU all up in my business? Customers are realizing something which the EU regulators have been pushing for quite some time, which is in many markets that are already regulated, the regulators are now going to want to see that you have a backup. That's true if you're buying cyber insurance. It's true if you're a financial institution. It is becoming more and more true if you are in other regulated segments like life sciences, pharmaceuticals, etc. So Microsoft is very rationally saying, oh, well, if the regulator says you have to have a backup, we would like to be the ones to sell it to you.
And I suppose there's also a case that sometimes the legal opinion on what the regulator thinks is that you should have a backup, but another financial institution, for example, might not get the same read of it unless it's very explicit, and also the what of what you back up. But also, if you think about most organizations and what the most important data is that they might need to be able to get back up and running if there's a big failure or a loss of data, then there's a core corpus of data, isn't there, that people need?
There usually is, and what's interesting is that for many customers, that data is not in Office 365. For example, I met with a company yesterday or the day before yesterday in the energy industry, and their CEO at their last all hands said, we install utility poles, among other things, but he said, we install utility poles. So if we lose every computer, people will still be out with a pen and paper saying, I installed this utility pole at this location, and we will still be in business. Yeah. He was making a different point, which is that their operations are resilient against disaster of the hurricane and flood type. It's very good for them.
They might struggle without an ERP communication.
Their critical data is not necessarily the mail in someone's Exchange Online mailbox or the files in someone's OneDrive. But knowing what data you have and being able to sort of inventory and value it correctly instead of just assuming that if it's in a Microsoft account somewhere that it's super important and you need to protect it, being able to sort of have a jaundiced view of that is useful too.
Now, so your session, again, it's ad tech, and it's going to cover all of that more. I think if I ask you any more questions about it, we'll be really sort of delving into the whole thing.
I don't want to spoil the show.
No,
Exactly. My usual repertoire of bad jokes, so everyone's looking forward to that.
And moving on to the PowerShell Script-Off, which Rich Dean is apparently hosting. At the current time, we have 3 tickets left. If I was thinking of attending that, what's in it for me? Who can tell me a little bit about this Script-Off from last year and what it went down like? Is it like a hackathon where you can win a prize?
Yeah, you can win a prize. There's $1,000 on the line.
Nice.
So basically, it's an opportunity to get up in front of people and show your PowerShell skills up. And what we're going to do is we're going to run a couple of rounds. Depends how many people we actually can beat. Last year, we only needed 2 rounds to get to an eventual winner. This year, we might need 3, whatever. But we'll be giving the folks who want to participate a challenge in the rounds. So we'll give them a scenario, which is a very practical scenario. It's one that happens in Microsoft 365 tenants every day. And we'll be saying, you've got to come up with the PowerShell to automate this entire process. We'll do the best we can in 20 minutes without using AI.
Or online sources. Can you Google for an answer?
You can Google to your heart content. We're just saying don't use AI sources because it's just too easy to plug in something and get out a script. Now the script might not be very good, and in a lot of the cases the script just won't work. But let's not do that. We're going to
reset. There's modules that can help you write a script at the command line. So practice the bits that surround your script, your conditional statements and so on, so you can get down to the meat bones of the script itself by the sound of it. And is this live on stage? With screens? Is it basically like a PowerShell equivalent of those MC wrap-offs?
Yeah, it's live on stage, and everybody has a helper.
Yeah.
So you've got somebody who is, it's kind of like phone a friend.
Yeah.
Who wants to be a millionaire, I guess. So you've got somebody who's going to be able to guide you. They're not going to be able, the rules of the game are that those people can't whisper, I do this into your ear, but they can't say, I might look for something like that.
Yeah.
So they can't actually guide you to the right answer, but they can give you hints, broad hints. And we had a bit of fun last year. I think some people got on stage and were a bit, they got a bit of stage fright. There's no doubt about that. And the reason why we're giving people mentors this year is to get past that. So you always have somebody to go and chat to on stage if you like. And we'll just see what comes out. Last year we had some really nice results. In fact, one of the competitors in the final now works for Microsoft. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad outcome, but that's the way it turned out,
So it's
a bit of fun. It's a bit of fun. That's the biggest thing about it. It's a bit of fun.
I like what you said, that this helps. It makes it more fun, doesn't it? Because I can imagine that this could happen to any of us, I suppose. You're on stage and you're thinking, and then you realise that you look like you just stood on stage still and silent. And then you start thinking about that as another problem. You've got the help with it. Someone who can say, I'm just trying to think of this, just to makes it a bit more interesting, or somebody to egg you on.
So that's the idea. Somebody to give you just that little helping hand to get you past the initial, I don't know, what should I do first? That horrible state that everybody gets into.
Right.
Being one of the judges last year, it was also a fun experience, as I recall, because usually it ends up trying to understand what the people are trying to accomplish. And then, like Tony more or less addressed, people end up on docs and they are using the Azure AD module, which doesn't work. So it's also difficult for the contestants. It's not easy being there.
Exactly.
And people can sign up for a bit of help with this. So I suppose if they sign up for this first, there'll be a bit like brain training, I suppose. They went to your the apps workshop as the pre-conference day, then especially as it's solving a common Microsoft 365 problem, don't know whether it's managing users groups and mailboxes, but you'll be all set unless you've been out on the wine in the days or the night the script off.
I mean, last year we asked people to write a report about the licenses account.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a pretty standard kind of thing that you're going to find in every tenant. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for. It's not black magic. We're not looking for people to write the next compiler or anything like that. It's just show off your PowerShell skills in a way that would be very practical and will help everybody in the room. And lots of people that were in the room, lots of people in the audience last year told us how much they enjoyed it, just seeing how people attacked problems.
People
came up with
black
solutions.
that's a hard trick, isn't it?
Some splat, yes. But mostly they didn't, because splatting has the unfortunate side effect of getting stuff down your front. You dribble a bit.
Enough about splatting now. And workshops, getting in the workshop. With you, Michel de Rooij, and Wasilius, which does seem like the perfect combo for those that want to learn Microsoft 365 PowerShell.
Yeah. To make the to differentiate between the workshop and the session I'm giving, both have PowerShell in the descriptions. Where the session is more about practical things, code flow, tooling. The workshop is part of the pre-conference day, and we're going to talk about doing tasks and common activities which you, as an administrator, probably likely are going to execute in your environment, all PowerShell related. So starting off with some theory, which we cannot avoid, things like how to deal with all the modules you need, all the dependencies, all the issues you're likely going to face with all the blockage. Yeah.
So it's a real zero to hero type workshop day.
Yeah, it's a kind of, I call it in the US, a 101 PowerShell, but more on practical approach. So not theory, but also practical commands and doing one-liners for reporting stuff. So we are making the transition from one-liners to basic scripting, and we're trying to cover that in one day. Ambitious, but
sounds pretty good. So the tech is going to be a great pre-workshop day, second and then third for the main conference itself, with sessions from yourself and many, many more. I hear the food in Dallas is pretty good as well.
So Dallas is famous for barbecue. Texas in general, of course, is famous for Tex-Mex. And there are plenty of instances of excellent barbecue and Tex-Mex and barbecue Tex-Mex around Metro Dallas. So I don't know exactly what the organizers are going to feed us, but I bet it'll be good. And if not, you can come find either me or Tony for restaurant tips.
Now, Tony, you've been a feature of tech for many years, and you're someone that's been heavily involved with it as well. If I was on the fence about a conference for this year, give me a good reason why tech should be the place that I choose to go.
It's small. If you go to one of the really big conferences, you will be lost in the maddening hordes. And the nice things about being a small conference is that the presenters get a chance to hang out with attendees and vice versa. And tech has a lot of parties, so that's an important part of the whole thing. I should mention that.
I mean, I haven't wanted to go to Ignite for a few years because it's not quite the same as it was many years ago. And the last few that I've been to in 2019 and so on it's great if you want to go for the after party, I suppose, but it's just so much and it's quite hard to wade through what is Microsoft marketing content, what is content that's there to fill a corporate checkbox of whatever that might be at the time, and then there seems to be less sort of nuts and bolts sections at conferences like that, and they're still charging for you to go, which I'm paying to go and learn about the thing that I've bought. Doesn't sit that well with me particularly, especially when it's the vendor themselves. So that's something I didn't see at Tech Europe the last few years, which I've been to. Obviously, you've got a few Quest sessions there as well, but at least they step back from the marketing stuff.
Well, I mean, the relationship here between Quest and Tech is that Quest is the sponsor. So as everything is going to have a sponsor, you need that to actually pay for the event. I mean, there's no getting away from it. That you need a sponsor. And that's what Quest is. But they don't, I don't work for Quest. They don't overload. They do allow quite an independent coverage of topics, some of which might not be advantageous to Quest. They might not feel that they have, for example, a product in a particular area.
Yeah.
But it's part of what they do. So we appreciate their sponsorship from that perspective.
But there is that big difference that it's hands-on, nuts and bolts. Even the people from Microsoft who are coming will be talking about the reality of the implementation, and that's a big difference. Then, as you say, with tech, it's not only independent in the way that it's put together, but it's real life, hands-on, and things that people have said to me about tech when I've spoken to them, when I've spoken to other speakers as well, is they really like the fact that it's in depth as well. It feels real, and the small community type atmosphere of a conference where you can get to know all the people.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to get to. We're trying to deliver that small town feeling. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody's willing to help everybody, and that seems to work out pretty well. I mean, you can get that at a big conference, but I look at it at night. I was just looking at the Ignite stuff last night, and Microsoft are trying to get. They said they were going back to the big conferences, so they're going to have 10,000 people in Chicago. Well, you can be one of 10,000 people in Chicago and learn all about Microsoft marketing techniques. That's grand. Or you can come to Dallas, eat fantastic food, and be part of 400, and get some really practical information. So your choice.
And one great thing is, apart from the flights and hotel and all that sort of stuff, you do get to bring a friend for free. So if you're entering the PowerShell Script-Off, you can bring a friend, because we've got the Practical 365 Tech buy one, get one free offer. So if you're going to send the team, that's a massive reduction in cost compared to any other conference. So definitely worth doing. Maybe send the whole team, and one of them has to go and join the PowerShell Script-Off. That'd be great. Their performance review. If they win, they get their yearly bonus. If they lose, they pay you £1,000.
If only.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, maybe that's. I don't got to answer that now. So the buy one get one offer, pretty good. Definitely, if you're trying to send the whole team, take advantage of it straight away. Now, I've got to thank everybody for joining us on this extra podcast about tech, and it's lovely to see Paul, obviously, who will be joining me on the next podcast.
Yeah, well, I'll be on the next episode with a special guest.
Yes, Paul Thorot will be joining us, which you can listen to this coming Monday, the 2nd of September. And thank you, Tony and Michelle, as always, for joining us. So I hope everybody at home has enjoyed the show today.
See you all in Dallas.